This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a very special edition. We've got Chastity McLeod with us. She's the Director of Technical Packaging at Nestlé USA and Packaging and Sustainability Network Lead for Nestlé North America. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Chastity.
Oh, thank you, John. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a real honor. And before we get talking about all the great work that you and your colleagues at Nestlé are doing in the sustainability and circular economy space, let's talk a little bit about Chastity. Where did you grow up and how did you even get here to this very important role that you have at Nestlé?
Well, thanks, John. It's been a little bit of a winding road that got me here. I actually grew up in South Carolina. I'm the youngest of 11 kids, first to go to college. And when I graduated, I entered into the field of packaging in Ohio, working for a company there. And then about 2 years after that, I joined Nestlé. So I've been here for about 17 years. I started my career as a technical packaging engineer here in the US. And about 4 or 5 years into my career, I had the awesome opportunity to move to Europe. And I lived in Germany for almost 3 years. And to be honest, that was about 10 or 12 years ago, but it was a really eye-opening experience when it came to waste, how the Europeans treat waste, and quite frankly, having grown up in the US and, when I grew up, I didn't even have recycling in my small town. It was really eye-opening. So I came back to the US. I headed up technical packaging for frozen and chilled globally for a while. I did a stint in product development, and a few years later, I ended up in packaging. And while this is not a new thing for Nestlé, obviously our sustainability ambitions have been communicated in 2018, and it was just a great opportunity for me to step into a space that I really loved and had a lot of passion and a lot of energy for. Throughout my career and all the moves I described, I did a lot of work in sustainability. I started to build up, some good industry connections there. And so when I took this role in 2019, it was a great chance for me to kind of start driving Nestlé's ambitions around sustainability.
Chastity, you bring up a good point about eye-opening, because when I've gone to Europe as well on sustainability and circular economy issues, it's been eye-opening for me. Eye-opening for you because they were so far ahead of us when it came to circular economy and sustainability DNA and working towards those goals already ahead of us in the U.S.?
Yeah. So not so much ahead of the goals, but just in terms of how they manage their waste, right? It was literally it was almost like a national pastime, the management of waste, right? Every day, here in the US, we have a day where they come pick up our trash. There it was different days for different things. And, we had black for, everything that was restable that might be incinerated or landfill. Blue was carton. Gelb, which is yellow, was everything plastic. And plastic, you would wait a month. You would actually pile that up in your garage and wait a month until they came and picked it up. We were responsible for our own glass. We had to take our glass to different bins so that they would be sorted into brown, white, and green. And this was 10, 12 years ago, right? And it was just a completely different way of living your life when it came to the end use of materials that I had just never experienced before. So I was really kind of energized by that and the fact that we could do a lot more in the US.
And Chastity, the truth is none of us in the US were even ever exposed to that before, because I grew up in New York City. We didn't have that in New York, just like you didn't have that in South Carolina. Yeah. So Europe was far ahead of us in terms of those issues, the separation, and as you say, managing their trash. Great way of putting it. For our listeners and viewers to find you and all your great colleagues and all the great work you're doing at Nestlé, they could go to NestléUSA.com, NestléUSA.com. It's such an honor to have you, Chastity, because, growing up, in the United States, Nestle's a comfort brand. It's a brand that's iconic and we're so proud of. And 97% or more of our households in the United States have Nestle products in our household. So, it's a brand that matters to all of us. It's not just some of us. With that in mind, can you talk a little bit about some of the great important work that your team is doing in packaging sustainability at Nestle?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. And I want to start it off by saying, I don't just say this because I work for Nestle, because I work very hard, and lots of people across our company work very hard to hold us accountable day in and day out. Sustainability, while it might be the buzzword now, is not a new thing for Nestle, right? For years and years, we have been working to drive out waste out of our processes, to leave our communities better than we found them. We've had our CSV strategy in place for years ahead of this. And I'm just so glad that, the notion of packaging and sustainability is getting the attention that it deserves, because it's a really important matter. And Nestle is really working hard to do its part in this space. We have, delivered our ambitions in 2018 that all of our packaging be reusable and recyclable by 2025. And we're working feverishly to make that happen. It is a multifaceted approach that we're taking, John. It's not a simple solution. So there are lots of different approaches.
Yeah.
One of which is really focusing on our materials and trying to make sure that they are actually designed through the process to be recycled. So you'll hear us talk about the notion of design for recycling, which means that we are actually designing materials that can be recycled from the inception. And
so give us an example. Give us an example of what it was and where you're going. Yeah.
Great example would be in the past, if we launched a new product, that product might have a colorant in it because, Black has historically been a symbol of premium. Today, we have golden design rules that we follow internally that say we have to eliminate carbon black from our portfolio. And so minimizing the use of pigments that keep things from being accepted into the recycling stream is a great example of a thing that we would do today that we might not have done in the past, or that was a part of our packaging in the past and we're eliminating going forward.
Understood. And, I'm so glad you said at the top of the conversation that sustainability, even though, yes, it's a buzzword, and the great thing is that we are truly moving from a linear to circular economy now, and there seems to be no going back. It's an unstoppable trend, thank gosh, that Nestle's been really doing this for much longer than just recent times. This has been a DNA issue there. And, that's why I really started this show, Chastity, 15 or 16 years ago, because what I realized back then even was that, unfortunately, mainstream media doesn't really cover the great stories of our important and iconic brands that are truly moving the needle on critical issues. They're focusing more on the more, let's say, catastrophic fire type of issues that catch our attention more. But good news, unfortunately, doesn't sell soap and doesn't sell advertising. So it's so great to be able to have you on to share the good news. That means so much to me and to our listeners. And it's important that they know all the great work that Nestle's doing. So thank you for sharing that and giving us a little perspective. It's really important, Chastity.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And yeah, like I said, there are things that we've been doing for a very long time. It's our job to get the work done, right? And ever since I've been in this job, we've been doing things like making our packaging fit for purpose, right? Which is, when we say that, what we mean is, that we are using packaging that has the bare minimum of packaging that we need in place to protect our product, make sure the quality of the ingredients stay where they are, but we're using as little material as we can. And then to your point about circularity, making sure that we put PCR and other post-consumer recycled materials back into our packaging to move that end of life from linear to circular. And so all of those things are things that we're doing to help make our packaging more sustainable.
What are some of the challenges? Like, you stepped into this role, and we all know, if we know anything about sustainability, it's a journey. We're never at the finish line. we could always be doing more as just people in our households, as singular human beings, as families, and as organizations and as corporations go. It's a journey. Where do you believe, when you took this very important role at Nestlé, where were you on the journey, and how's it been going since you took this role?
Well, since I took this role, I mean, I would say I'm very excited about all the progress we've made, right? At the end of the day, our job is, and we've committed to transitioning our portfolio from eliminating things that can't be recycled to being fully recyclable by 2025. And that's a huge ambition, and there's a lot of work to be done. So we've been very busy about that business. And at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of positive things happening. There are some challenges, as you asked, one of which is we have a pretty fragmented, infrastructure here in the U.S. Things that our recycling infrastructure varies from state to state. And so what we've tried to do is just invest in the general infrastructure itself and try to make sure that material recovery facilities that are out there, that we are starting to invest in those to help them be more efficient, to collect more and be as effective as we can to help drive circularity. The fragmented nature of the recycling industry is an ever present issue and it's not just for Nestlé, it's for anybody who's trying to drive recyclability across the industry. But, we have to work with folks. We have to work with credible coalitions. There are lots of people doing great work in this space, and it's our responsibility to help invest in those material recovery facilities and partner with the people who are trying to advance circularity as much as we are.
You make a great point about the patchwork quilt of the laws across the different states. Imagine we're here doing this conversation together in 2022, Chastity, and imagine how much we know about the importance of responsible recycling, but only 11 states have even a bottle redemption law. And, that makes no sense to me. And that just shows you in that industry how fragmented things are, on a state-by-state basis. With regards to your very ambitious goals of 2025, how hard is it to go back to your packaging manufacturers and ask them to create new products that disrupt the legacy products they've been making for you for all these years, so that way you could hit your goals? Is that a constant give and take and collaboration that's an ongoing journey together?
Absolutely. It's a journey, but sustainability is good for business. And I think people have to remember that, right? Sustainability does not have to be counter to your business ambitions. And our suppliers, a lot of them we've been doing business with for many, many years.
Right.
And they understand our ambitions and our objectives and our goals, and they're not dissimilar from their ambitions and their objectives and their goals. Because they also want to do the right thing for the environment. And so I found that, when we work together, when we're very clear about what our ambitions are, they partner with us to find the solutions that we need. Some even go out and acquire technologies and businesses that might have even been counter to theirs, because they want to help us deliver their ambitions while they deliver theirs, and do the right thing for our consumers, for our customers, and for the planet.
For our listeners and viewers, we've got Chastity McLeod with us today. She's the Director of Technical Packaging, Nestlé USA, and Packaging and Sustainability Network Lead for Nestlé North America. To find Chastity and her colleagues, you could go to NestléUSA.com. Let's break down your title, because this is really important. You're the Director of Technical Packaging for Nestlé USA, but Packaging and Sustainability Network Lead for Nestlé North America. Now, you mentioned your great experiences in Europe, Chastity. Now, I assume as the Packaging Sustainability Network Lead for North America, there's a Packaging and Sustainability Network Lead for different regions around the world. Are you how often do you meet and share best practices, best supplier information? So this way, the ocean is rising together at Nestlé across the whole planet. How does that work? It's fascinating. It would be fascinating to understand that.
Yeah. So we have a global head of packaging sustainability who kind of coordinates the folks who, like I said, I do this for Zone North America. I have colleagues who do this in other parts of the world. And we meet weekly, bi-weekly, depending on. So it's very difficult for China to meet the same time as the US. So we have to work across time zones and things. But at the end of the day, we're in constant contact with each other and sharing best practices, sharing initiatives that we have, whether it be investment opportunities in infrastructure or work that we're doing with new technologies that are coming about. So we share those things really frequently with each other. And then even here within the US, we have different operating companies for Nestlé. And so when I say network lead, that means I'm pulling together those operating companies so we can continue to share best practices and even talent, right? Because the people who help us advance this internally are just as important as the initiatives that we're tackling. So yeah, it's my role to make sure I'm keeping us connected both here in the US and across North America, as well as with our global colleagues who are also doing awesome work in their businesses.
I think that's so interesting and so wonderful, because what most people don't really, understand, if they're not in the business that you are or I am, is that it's truly one environment and one world. If there's a catastrophic environmental experience in Japan, it affects all of us in the world. If there's a catastrophic event in the United States, it affects all of us. It's really just one environment and one world. It goes across borders. So working across borders collaboratively makes so much sense to come up with the best solutions. I just love that. Talk about some of the challenges that you face or things that keep you up at night. You have very ambitious goals. You're only 3 years away from them. Are you going to get them? And what's still nagging at you what hurdles do you still have to overcome?
The biggest hurdles we have are just making sure that we have the materials that we need to be circular, right? We made strong commitments around the usage of PCR in our materials. We want to make sure we have access to those. That goes hand in hand with our investment with the Closed Loop Leadership Fund, which I'm sure if you're not aware of, John, we've invested $30 million in our Closed Loop Leadership Fund, which is it's a group that's really focused on upgrading recycling infrastructure, bolstering the packaging materials collection process, and securing access to food grade materials that we can then use in our packaging. And so relationships like that really help us drive our ambitions, and partners like Closed Loop are just great for the industry at large. It's pretty competitive, right? We have folks like Unilever and PepsiCo who are all in there. And when we invested in Closed Loop, we did it for a couple of reasons. One is obviously to drive circularity, but the other ambition of Nestlé is to make sure that it's catalytic, right? No one person can solve this problem alone. And so the hope was that by investing in something like Closed Loop, others will invest as well, and we will infuse as much capital as we can into these material recovery facilities so that they can be as efficient as possible.
Well, I have to tell you a little bit of truth in advertising. Ron Gonen, the founder of Closed Loop, is 17 years a good friend of mine, and Closed Loop is an investor in our company. I'm really proud of that because it's really great that Nestlé made a $30 million investment. We all know, and if we don't know, the world should know the important work Closed Loop's doing across all sectors of circular economy and circularity. And Nestlé being in there moves the needle. It shows the world how much you care, not just about Nestlé itself, but about the world at large, the environment at large. And I'll tell you what, it's really impactful that you guys made that investment. And I'm really proud of you guys for doing that, because it really gets others to then similarly move and write checks like that to help that fund growing so they could do more good with that capital.
Yeah, it's a great initiative, and we're very excited to partner with them.
Let's talk about other great organizations. At the top of the show, you mentioned other partnerships and other, obviously the patchwork quilt of laws make it difficult to sometimes get things done and get things done efficiently and effectively. Talk about other organizations you work with to help expedite your goals and also make the world a better place.
Yeah. I can tell you there are a lot of things that are difficult, but I have this saying that I always go back to, and it says hard things are hard, right? And so at the end of the day, what we have to focus on are the good things that are happening. And,
Yep.
and to your point about, the organizations that are out there doing really awesome things, there are companies like TRP, right? The Recycle Partnership that really is laser focused on making sure that consumers have access to curbside recycling. They do a lot. They have tremendous understanding around the infrastructure in the U.S. and what it's going to take for all of our companies to meet our ambitions in terms of consumers having access to recycling. Last year, in partnership with Walmart, the Recycle Partnership, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and others, companies like mine, PepsiCo, Unilever, we sat together and we actually created a tool called Plastic IQ that basically is a tool that smaller companies, unlike the Nestlé's of the world, where we have a lot of tremendous amount of resource that we can put towards this. There are smaller companies that might not have resource to that effect. And what we did with Plastic IQ was create a tool that smaller companies can use to actually develop sustainability strategies for their businesses. And so companies like TRP, U.S. Plastics Pack, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and even the APR, which is a great partner of ours that helps us validate that when we say things are recyclable, they are. So it's not just us, patting ourselves on the back that we did a little bit of work and that we made the advancements that we said. So there are just numerous organizations out there that are just so important for the movement of sustainability, and we're just excited to partner with them all.
And for people to find Plastic IQ, they could go to what? PlasticIQ.org?
That's correct. Keith Harrison and her team are doing great work there. And if you go to that website, you can learn more about the Plastics IQ tool.
Unfortunately, when the media covers sustainability or the environment, there seems to be two drumbeats, two stories. One, of course, is the positivity of Tesla and Elon Musk, because he's a larger than life human being and figure, and good for him and good for Tesla and all the great work they've done. And then they cover the boogeyman of post-consumer waste plastic. And it hurts my heart because we don't get out, like you said, enough of these great stories about what you're doing. So let's disavow our listeners and our viewers of post-consumer waste plastic. Really, like you said, by 2025 or soon thereafter, most of your packaging is going to be recyclable. And so that means that, and I assume other great brands like yours are following suit. So really, the change is here. The change is happening. And the good news is that all the plastics that are coming out now in the packaging world are highly recyclable compared to 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah, our ambition is to make sure that all of our packaging is recyclable or reusable by 2025, right? And that ambition we set in 2018, and we've been working towards that feverishly, and that's still our ambition, is to deliver that.
Chastity, how can we be better consumers? How can we be better consumers so when we buy your great products, even though we're still not set up like Europe yet, and we know that every state and every city really, unfortunately, is different with regards to how they handle trash in the United States. How can we be better consumers on how we handle our trash? Do you have some favorite tips that you share with people when you get together with friends, relatives, and other social settings?
Yeah, so besides them telling me about packaging from other companies that it doesn't work for them, because they're always like, hey, am I going to get my HP cartridge? I'm like, I don't work for them. I'm sorry. So besides that, the tip that I give them, no, it all matters. But the tip that I give them is this, right? Is that there's a great thing that has happened in the last few years, and there's a label on all of our packaging, a how to recycle label, that gives you a great indication of what you can do with your packaging. And there's guidance that we basically have to have in place before we can put those labels on our packaging. So they're a great indicator of what you can and cannot do with your packaging from a recyclability standpoint. And if you have a question, you can go to howtorecycle.com. It's right there on the package, and it gives guidance on how you can manage your packaging.
Before I let you go today, because you mentioned earlier about how sustainability has been part of Nestlé's DNA, how big, relatively speaking, you're in the technical packaging section, and also you're the sustainability network lead for Nestlé North America. But this is just packaging. How big is sustainability as a whole, macro, at Nestlé in terms of different divisions and people? Just give us a little bit of roughly how large sustainability is and how much it means to Nestlé.
It's too hard for me to quantify it in terms of like number of people, but what I can say to you is sustainability is a part of everything we do, right? It's a part of our ingredient work that we do, how we source our ingredients, what we're doing in the space of regenerative ag, how we manufacture our products, right? The types of energy that we use to run our facilities.
Wow.
And we have ambitions around not just packaging, but we have ambitions around net zero, right? We want to have zero emissions by 2050. So this is a huge ambition for us. We talked a lot about packaging here, but whether it's in the space of ingredients, packaging, manufacturing, transportation, all facets of those things have sustainable elements to them that we're driving for improvements and efficiencies and reductions in and day out, and have been for years. So it's a really important part of who we are and what we do. And if you want to learn more about that, you can pick up our annual CSV report. It details a lot of that. It's a very transparent document.
And can people find that on NestleUSA.com and download it?
I'll have to get my comms team and find out exactly what it's saying. I don't know if it's on Nestle.com or maybe on our global Nestle site, but I think it's certainly, if you Google Nestle CSV, it will pop up for sure.
Let's just say this, though. Let's agree upon this. At Nestle, sustainability is a DNA issue across every sector and across the whole company and the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
That's just wonderful. And, for our listeners and viewers, again, to find Chastity and all the great work she's doing in packaging and sustainability, and her great colleagues, to learn more about everything they're doing in sustainability, please go to NestleUSA.com, NestleUSA.com, to also learn about the great initiative that they've created with regards to plastic recycling, so smaller companies can get more involved with sustainability and responsible plastic recycling. Please go to www.plastikiq.org, plastikiq.org. Chastity McLeod, you are amazing. You're doing such important and impactful work. Again, we're so thankful for not only what you're doing and the time you spent today, but for making the world a better place. And I thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Chastity.
Thank you so much, John. It was a real pleasure. Thanks for having us. And thanks for all the great work you do as well. We appreciate you.
This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com.